Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Nicole Serrato, and you're joining the Resume Building Interview Tips and Internships virtual event. We have a great line of panels here for you today, and I can't wait to get started. First, I want to welcome all the CSF alumni who are here and their parents. I want to welcome the young leaders and the president councils who are here. And just so you know, we have an upcoming event in 2 weeks, which is the last webinar of this whole segment. So make sure to watch out for your emails for that invite. To give you a little bit of idea of what is the CSF Alumni Network and what is the Young Leaders Board and the President Council. First off, CSF gives scholarships to kids K through 8th grade. And once you graduate from 8th grade, you then become an alumni of the scholarship. I'm an alumni myself. I received the scholarship as well. And so after you graduate and no longer receive a scholarship, we still want to stay in your lives and try to provide resources and information that can continue to help you on that journey. And so that's what the Alumni Network is. It is here to be a resource for you and a support system. Next, we have the Young Leaders Board, which is a network of young professionals in New York City who care about education and who want to help in that journey with along with CSF. And so they volunteer their time and their resources to help provide more scholarships and to come tonight and volunteer and be on a panel and give you information. So that's the Young Leaders Board and the President Council. And so we really appreciate their time for being here. They're very open here to share their experience and to kind of give you a guide of how you enter into the workforce and what to do when you're at an interview. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists. First, we have Katie, who works at Morgan Stanley and is a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. We have Jimena, who works at Goldman Sachs. She graduated from the University of Connecticut with a degree in economics. We have Caitlin, who works at Touchstorm and graduated from Pepperdine University. And we have Stefan, who's a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin and works at KPMG. And lastly, we have Josh, who has been on several of our panels, and we're always happy to have him again. He works at Gold Point Partners, and his alma mater is the University of Michigan. So thank you all of the panelists who are here. We appreciate your time. And each of them are going to speak for a few moments about their early experiences working, interning, and they're going to share any advice that they have for you. If you have any questions for the panelists individually or in a general sense afterwards, we will be having a Q&A section. So make sure to stick around for that. So if they're giving you advice or within their few minutes that they're talking right now, you think of something, write down your question, hold it, type it in the chat, type it in the Q&A. We're either going to bring you on screen to ask your question, or if you don't want to come on screen, you can always submit a question anonymously. So without further ado, we're going to have Katie go first. And Katie, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Allen. I work in public finance investment banking at Morgan Stanley. I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. I'm really excited to answer any questions you have. So a little bit about myself. I actually did not begin my career at Morgan Stanley. This is actually the second job I've held. So I'm going to go back a little bit and talk about, looking for my first job when I was in college. When I was beginning this career search, I believe the first critical lesson that I learned was to begin this search as early as possible. So when searching for a summer internship in my junior year of college, I waited quite a bit to find this internship. And by quite a bit, I mean like right up until May. And it really just stressed me out not knowing what was going to happen or what I was going to do that summer. So after that summer, I really took that lesson forward as I began my senior year. And I really just started to look at jobs as soon as I, got to school in my final year. I liked the idea of casting a wide net, of interviewing at a number of places, and hopefully in the culmination of this process, having a number of alternatives to choose from. So in doing this early and often, I was able to get in front of a number of prospective employers, and I felt like I could really take my time in selecting a job where I felt connected to the industry, the people, the firm, and the culture, instead of being reactive to the first opportunity that arose. by waiting to look for jobs until later. Furthermore, I felt like by getting on this early and, interviewing at as many places as possible, it really helps to hone your interview skills, and sort of refine why you're interested in certain jobs and certain places. So in doing that, I would say my biggest piece of advice would be, don't be shy about interviewing for jobs, even if you don't think you're qualified or, you're not entirely sure if it's what you're interested in. I view job interviews as great practice, to, get to know people, get to know about industries, maybe find something that you maybe didn't know you were interested in or didn't know that was even a job in the first place. That's sort of how I stumbled into the industry in which I'm in now. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. I am happy to answer any of your questions as it pertains to interviews, resumes, or anything else. And with that, I'll turn it back to Nicole.
Thank you so much, Katie. So next we're going to have Jimena go, and she's going to go ahead and talk about her experience in internships in the workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Jimena, and I work in compensation, which is a human resources function at Goldman Sachs. I am about 5 years out of college, and I just did what would be considered a career switch in December. So I feel pretty, close to this topic, as this is something that I really just went through. I want to echo Katie's advice in getting an early start on it. It is never too early to be asking for help from your career centers, from people in your network. It's never too early to be looking for job postings online. And if you don't get something in the fall semester, keep looking. Do not be deterred, because there are going to be smaller companies that have, less structured internship programs that are going to be hiring closer to the summer. So don't let it discourage you if you don't find something that you feel is the right fit for you or you don't get an offer. But I do highly recommend, as Katie said, to get the ball rolling as soon as possible. What I really recommend is creating a presence on LinkedIn and making sure that you're connecting with people that you meet that are a couple of years older than you, individuals that are, people that you've met through your previous jobs, maybe teachers, professors. They're really going to be the ones that are going to introduce you. Every job and internship I ever had was because I knew somebody that was able to, speak to my abilities. And, I might not have known them really well, but I had met them in a professional setting and gave that really great impression. I did used to work as a recruiter, so I will give you my golden tips for advice for interviews. Number one is make sure you practice saying what you're going to talk about in your interview. The recruiter's always going to ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about your responsibilities and your prior roles. If you don't have any experience, that's okay. Be prepared to talk about why you're interested in the company. What about the role excites you? I always recommend having on one screen their job description so that you can tie the action words that they have on there to the responsibilities to, the qualities that you have in your personality and your work ethic. And then once you gain more experience and have an ability to speak to things that you're doing, when you're walking through your background, you're going to want to highlight three things: your responsibilities, your problem solving skills, and your project management skills. So anytime that you have had an issue with a teammate, if an issue arose, like how you took care of it, making sure that you explain that you took ownership, that maybe you messed up something, that is not the end of the world. Use that opportunity to highlight, I did make a mistake, but these are the steps that I took to action to move forward. And those are really great things that recruiters love to see. And once again, I just iterate it, like practice in front of a mirror, because the more confident that you feel in what you're going to say, the more eloquent's going to come out, and the recruiter's just going to think that you're really prepared. And that is what they're ultimately looking for, especially for individuals that don't have a lot of experience. It's that preparedness and that understanding of what the role in the company do.
Amazing. That's a lot of great advice. I hope everyone out there is taking notes already. So we're going to go ahead and have Caitlin go next.
Thanks, Nicole. I actually have a similar, recent experience as Jimena. I recently transferred positions, so I'm no longer at Touchstorm. I'm actually at a company called Tongle. Another confusing T word, but I work in marketing, in advertising and content production. So essentially my role is to oversee some of our top accounts and help our clients tell their stories in order to grow their digital audience through video content. So I think for me, everything comes back to storytelling. I think, especially coming out of a recent interview process with a career shift, like Amanda mentioned, like really understanding like where you've come from, and what got you to, whatever role that you're applying for, I think is really important to make sure, a recruiter understands that part of your story. And most likely a lot of that isn't going to involve job experience, and that's totally okay. I think that what makes us all unique and what gives you that like first impression with recruiters or with whoever you're interviewing with is what your overall life experience has been. So I think that that's really important, and to just go into those conversations confident, knowing that like life experiences are just important as internships or like previous work experience. For me, I found all of my internships through college boards, like directly through my campus. I went to Pepperdine, and they had a really good like online portal that would help connect students. So I was lucky on that front, but I think it's also important to note that like internships aside, the best and biggest connections that I made actually during college were with professors, as well as I had two like part-time jobs where I worked as a nanny and I also worked as a personal assistant, both of which families, were local where I went to school. And actually, I found out later that they had a lot of great connections because I built those relationships with them when it was time for me to get out into the workforce. Like it was very easy for them to connect me with people. And that was because they trusted me to take care of their kids, or they trusted me to pay their bills, and things of that nature. So again, just going back to like the importance of your story and, what you can bring to the table that's not necessarily like work experience, I think is really important, because I remember feeling so intimidated when I was first entering like out of college, like sitting down with these people and like, not having this extensive resume. But that actually wasn't the case. Like there was so much experience that I had in different areas of life, that I think is worth speaking to. So I think that's my biggest advice. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions for me specifically.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. A lot of tidbits already. I'm telling you guys, if you're not taking notes, you already should be. Okay, Stefan, if you want to go next, and then we'll have Josh jump in right after you.
Sure. Thanks, Nicole. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I think it's beneficial, being part of a program that is where we can get advice from other individuals. So I'll share mine tonight. So as Nicole mentioned, my name is Stefan Thavalingam. I graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. After graduation, I joined Bank of America Merrill Lynch in their enterprise risk group in Dallas, Texas. And then after that, spent a few years at Bank of America and then moved into KPMG, into the risk consulting group within New York City. So I'll take a step back and kind of go into my college experience. So coming to college, I was a finance major. And after the first year, I vividly remember asking myself, I declared my major, what am I going to do with it now? So based on my coursework I had taken in my prior experience as well, I realized I did enjoy kind of the forecasting and analysis side of finance. And I figured I would explore a career as a financial analyst. At the time, I didn't know anyone within the field, so I reached out to my immediate family members and friends, and was able to get in touch with a junior at my university who was a financial analyst at Boeing. And from there, I was able to secure an internship through Boeing, by getting to know some of the individuals there, and also networking with some of the company employees there as well. So my first piece of advice for this is, when searching for internships, try to utilize your network. Especially at your age, I understand it's not as vast as where we are today. So I would use your immediate friends and family to kind of ask those questions as to what you want to do and what internships you want to pursue, because that helped me personally. And regarding going to internships itself, I vividly remember the weeks and months leading up to the recruiting periods at University in the fall, and it was very hectic to say the least. But I didn't have much interview experience, let alone career searching. But I was able to learn a lot regarding interviewing, And interviewing can be pretty daunting. It still is daunting for me a lot of the times. And my piece of advice for you in regards to interviewing that helped me a lot is kind of keeping a running log of questions, of common questions that are typically asked in interviews, and then record your experiences and your responses for each of those questions. So you have like a running log of experiences you can borrow from when you do get ready to interview. So yeah, those are my two main pieces of advice for tonight is first kind of utilizing your immediate network, which is your friends and family. And in terms, when it comes to interviews, try to keep a running log of the common interview questions that are asked, and then kind of the responses for those questions as well.
Thank you so much, Stefan. And then Josh, we're gonna have you up next, and then we'll head into the Q&A section.
Sure. So I think, I echo the same thing that everyone else said. Really excited to be here. I think this is a great opportunity to just hear from a whole bunch of people who have, kind of gone through the process and have some real life experience. Just to give a quick background in case, it is of interest to anybody or kind of sparks any thoughts or questions or ideas. I went to the University of Michigan and was in the business school. And, contrary to probably what most people think, you don't have to necessarily know what you want to do when you're in college. I remember I was in the business school and so many kids were talking about going into investment banking and private equity. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't even know what those things meant. And so, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked business. I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew I liked it. And so kind of similar to Stefan, I, talked to friends, I talked to family, friends of the family, and said, here's the things I like, here's the things I'm interested in, how should I get started? What are the things that I should be learning and building my skill sets and things like that. And so, for whatever reason, kind of the feedback that I got was that, accounting would be a great foundation for kind of whatever I wanted to do after that. So, so that's kind of what I got my degree in and got my CPA and started working at PwC after college. And then, quickly learned that that wasn't what I enjoyed, but it kind of opened me up to other things that were out there. And so, because of that, I got sort of introduced to the whole investment banking, private equity world. And, that really piqued my interest. So, I started reaching out to, everybody possible in my network that, knew anything or anyone in the field. And so, fortunately, after about 1,001 calls, landed in an interview and got an investment banking job. And, after a couple of years doing that, kind of same thing, realized that, I liked it, but on to the next thing. And, now I've been in private equity for a couple of years. So I could talk at length about all the things that I think are important and key takeaways and lessons. But I think just from that story specifically, it's that, you don't have to be 19, 20 and know exactly what it is that you want to do. Just always have your eyes and ears open and, kind of always be of the mindset that, you don't know what you don't know. So keep talking to people, learning about different things. You may, learn about new industries, new jobs, new whatever that might pique your interest or have a conversation or make a connection, that just intrigues you, and you just never know where it'll go. So just kind of always, just kind of always be open to, you can get there is what I'm saying. And you just kind of never know where you'll wind up. So just always be open to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. So we're going into the Q&A section, and we already got a lot of great advice, and we have some questions coming in. So remember, panelists, raise your hands if you want to go ahead and tackle this one first. First question is coming anonymously. When did you really know what you wanted as a career goal, and how did it impact what courses or extracurricular activities you chose in college? The second part of that question is, are you happy with the decision you made? Ooh, Jimena.
I did not know what I wanted to do until about a year and a half ago, and that's 4 years out of college. Um, in college, I thought I wanted, I knew I wanted to do HR. I wanted to work in recruiting. That was like what I had learned. And I actually studied economics, which has some stuff to do, but really not a lot. And it wasn't really detrimental to me in any way when I was pursuing internships. So, similar, to Josh, find something that you like and that you enjoy and that's going to build a good foundation and is going to allow you to continue growing, versus, focusing on like, what your end of your goal is. Obviously try to align them to the best of your ability. But if you're a sophomore or a junior in college and you still don't know what you want to do, it's going to be okay. I promise you that. Just make sure that you're building your network and keep talking to people. I still learn every single day about a new job that exists that I had no idea was even somebody's responsibility. So just like make sure that you push yourself to keep learning. And if you land in your first job and you're like, I hate this, take the experiences and the network that you're making from it and make the best of it and build off of that and launch yourself into your next role.
That's some terrific advice. You're gonna be okay. I love that. Okay, Josh.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with what Jimena was saying. And I think kind of, building off of what I was saying is that you really just don't know about what you don't know, right? So the more conversations you have with people, the more you learn about different industries that might pique your interest, and just trying things. Exactly like Jimena said, like you don't need to know exactly what you want to do. I have a younger sister who is in law school right now, and she has an internship, and she's kind of iffy on whether or not she likes the industry that she's working in or her job specifically. And one of the things that I tell her and other people too is that learning what you don't like is almost as important, if not more important, than learning what you do like. Kind of narrowing the field of things that you do like or that you could see yourself going into, or knowing the things that you don't want to do, are all good. It doesn't mean that you'll necessarily enjoy what you're doing, but at least you know that you don't want to do it. So just kind of take a path, see where it goes, and it doesn't have to be an end all be all.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with that. That's a great tidbit. Anybody else have a response to that?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Kate. I didn't see your hand. Oh my goodness.
No, you're totally fine.
Blended into the yellow of your border. Go ahead.
I'm sure it did. No worries. I was just gonna, to answer the second part of that question, I would actually challenge you to use the clubs and the sports and the activities you can get involved in high school and in college to sort of explore what you may or may not like. It's a really, really low commitment way to figure out, like, hey, maybe this is for me. Or maybe you go and you're like Josh said, I really don't like this, and that's okay. It's a really great way to get involved, learn about an industry, learn about a network of people, build a network of people, and sort of then figure out whether or not this might be something you would like to make a career out of. At worst, you're going to have a network of people from which you may or may not have made friendships. At best, you might find something that will, enable you to build a network that might lead to a job opportunity in the future. But I wouldn't necessarily let your career aspirations drive your involvement. I would almost say you should let your interests drive your involvement and hope that that can transition itself into something you end up loving, because I think most people on this webinar would agree that at the end of the day, you're really going to want to love what you do, or you're not going to be happy in the day-to-day. And so finding something where you're both happy and you're really liking what you do can be critical. And the clubs and the intramurals and, all of that in college is such a great way to get to know people without, having to really immerse yourself in a job full time.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I want to mention, we have another question coming in and we're going to bring the student on camera, but I want to mention one thing before we get off of the subject is I switched majors 4 times. Like is it 4 times? Oh yes, it is 4 times. It was psychology, then I went from psychology to English, from English to journalism, which is how I ended up with a minor in journalism. And then yes, 4 times. It was like 4 times because I love psychology and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be a psychologist. And I was like, no, I love writing, but English didn't have as much to do with the creative writing, but different, it's like novelish. And then I went to journalism, which I didn't like either. And then I finally figured out that I loved film. And so I graduated with a major in film, a minor in journalism, but all the classes, and I think that's what the question is kind of asking, like, what impact did it have on your courses and extracurricular activities? I guess that's more clubs, but on the courses, is it just really gave me a well-rounded perspective. And so even though I took psychology classes and journalism classes and I ended up getting that minor in journalism, I feel like the overall education, even if I switched majors, really helped. And because I switched so many times, I still graduated on time because I just added extra courses to my semester. But I think regardless you're still getting an education in something that might be helpful to you, and you can have a conversation with someone in the future. So that's funny. 4 times. They're like 4 times. Yes. So we're going to bring Isabella on next. Enough of that. So we're going to bring her on screen to ask her question. She has a great question. So she's getting moved to us right now. There she is. Isabella, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
All right, go ahead.
Let me just find my question. Oh, great. I lost my question. I think it was, okay. So Caitlin had mentioned like a website that she found like internships. I don't know if it was a website, but it was like somewhere you found internships on. So I was wondering if they have that for like high school students or anything.
That is a good question that I do not know the answer to. The website that I used was through my college. So various companies or the individuals, like, whether it was babysitting or it was an internship, could post directly onto that board. But through high school, I think it would just be dependent on your school specifically. I don't know if anyone else on the panel would have any other suggestions for that early on.
Kate? Or Stefan?
I know there's a new platform called a Handshake. I am not sure if it's geared towards if it has any opportunities for high school students, but that might be a good way. Something somebody always gave me the advice to do was, feel free to volunteer your time with anybody that might own like a small business or things like that, just to get night exposure to like what they're doing, and they might end up knowing somebody. And don't be scared to ask people, what can I get involved with? And if you find like a part-time job, for example, like asking them, is there anything I can do to like learn this aspect of the business? Like small things like that really make a difference. And, like what I did in high school was I worked at an SAT tutor, and I used to grade people's homework. And I used to talk to parents and like cash checks. But I, through that, like really learned like how to talk to adults, like organization skills, like things like that, like I worked in an SAT tutor. It wasn't anything impressive, but the fact that I just had a job, like, and those like small skills I learned are something you can speak to. But I really recommend to people that you might know in your community that have like local businesses is a good place to start, or I would try Handshake. That might be helpful.
Amazing. And then Stefan, did you want to go ahead and answer this question too?
Yeah, I had a couple of recommendations. So I know based on like my cousins who are in high school, there's a great site called Check Internships. You can check that out. And then I have a kind of a personal recommendation. If you're interested in like nonprofit management or like nonprofit, I did this internship in high school. I thought it was a great experience. It's a Bank of America Student Leaders Program. So if you're interested in nonprofit or not have nonprofits work, I recommend that. So it's an 8-week internship program between your junior and senior years. and you get placed into a, nonprofit, like local nonprofit, and you learn how it works and kind of the mission they do, and you interact with other nonprofits as well in the area as well. So I think they also have a satellite kind of internship program in New York, and if you're interested in that, I can definitely provide more information on that.
Yeah, can you definitely send me more information on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more than happy.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And then Josh, thank you so much, Stefan. Thank you, Jimena.
Yeah, I think, the only thing that I would add is, I think it's phenomenal that, you're trying to gain experience while you're in high school. I think not many people would be trying to do that, which is great. And one thing I would say is, I think people in general really respect somebody who is hustling, right? And I think, if you're somebody who's in high school and you're just reaching out to people, whether it's a family friend or a friend of a friend or a business, I mean, even if it was like a, local coffee shop, and you said, hey, I'd love to work here for the summer, I think people just really respect, hustle. I remember at my last job, part of it, since it was a smaller firm, I was junior, but I still had to, review resumes and interview people, and not to take anything away from brand name schools or brand name jobs or anything like that. I think those are all phenomenal to have, but to me, when I was interviewing somebody or talking to somebody, and it came through that they did their homework and that they were really interested and they really wanted to do whatever it is that, it was, I think, you can't go wrong just by trying. I mean, what's the worst someone's going to say? Like, sorry, no, you're too young, or we don't have any availability, whatever. They may lead you to somebody else. So just, it's a numbers game at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Isabella, for that question. That was a really good question. We're going to segue.
Thank you for answering.
Yeah, you're
Jimena
welcome.
and Josh and Stefan. Thank you.
I was just going to say something random. Make sure you leverage the young leaders, and like there's a page on your website that has listed like where we all work and what we do. So like if you see a company that you're interested in, like ask Kurt or somebody for our email addresses. I guarantee you they'd be more than happy to talk to you about what they do, to put you in touch with people that they know at companies that you might be interested in, be able to talk to you about, for an hour, about whatever you'd like to know. Like, make sure you leverage it like that. This is what we want to be doing, and this is what we're here for. Like, don't forget that.
Yeah, that's some really.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, also leverage your alumni. I actually work with a CSF alumni at Morgan Stanley, and that's how I got involved in this in the first place. So leverage them as well, because I'm sure that they would love to talk to you about anything at any point. So likewise, leveraging us, leverage them too.
Yes, exactly. You're part of this alumni network, and what that comes with is resources and information. So, use what they just said. This could have put it more perfect. So if you are not aware of what LinkedIn is sort of a social network for networking within the business world, is the best way that I can describe it. So CSF, we have our page on here. A lot of our young leaders, they're following the page. If you're not, you can do it now. And you can also, just off of it, you can add CSF to your personal page, which I'm going to show you what that looks like now. This is my profile on LinkedIn. And so essentially you can jump on here, just like you use Facebook, just like you use Instagram, you can log into LinkedIn and create a profile for yourself. And what it kind of looks like is a resume, essentially. It's your online resume. So it has here, that I work for CSF. It has here where I interned before, which is Millennium Films. I interned at the Academy of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles. And then it shows here I did finance before. It lists my education, any licenses, any volunteer that experience that I have. And so this is a great way to start learning how to even build a resume, is go in and start filling out your LinkedIn, and create a LinkedIn profile. There's a lot of tools that LinkedIn provides. You see up here, it says like my network. So it's like people requesting you, or you can connect with people who may know you. Another thing is under the job sections on LinkedIn, they have internships listed. So this is another great resource is to find internships. So we're not going to spend too much time on this, but I just wanted to bring this up so our alumni know that this is, if you're in high school, like Isabella, and you're thinking about applying for an internship and don't know where to look, or want to network with people in a field you're interested in, this is a great place to start. Create your LinkedIn, go ahead and like CSF's page so you connect with us on LinkedIn, and then go from there. And you can always reach out to myself or Elizabeth, or if you want to reach out to any of the Young Leaders Board and you need help building this, we're more than happy to help walk you through that. I'm always available. I'll put my email in the chat. So without further ado, we're going to go on to the next question, but this is what it looks like. And yeah, utilize that. There's a lot of articles on LinkedIn that tells you, gives you interview tips. It tells you where to find internships. Okay, so we're going on to the next question. So this is coming in anonymously. This question is it worth it to take a summer job or internship, even if it has nothing to do with my ultimate career goal? Anybody want to take this?
Yes. Unless you have something that's more relevant. Yes. Any work experience is better than no work experience. And just like talking about projects and any relationships that you build, if you make a good impression, like the odds are that they would call you back for a role in a different capacity. As a recruiter, it happened to me multiple times where the individual interned in one department. They did such a good job, but they were not interested in the role that the manager went out of their way to reach out to the hiring manager for the new full-time position and say, you need to hire this person, like great work ethic, great communication skills. It's better than nothing. I promise you that.
Yeah, definitely great answer. Josh? Oh, your hand is still up. Okay, you didn't want to answer that question.
Sorry.
So I agree with Jimena. I think obviously I had an internship in film, and that's what I was pursuing, but I also had other side summer jobs that had nothing to do with what I was looking to pursue, and those actually led to connections that led me to get a job just recently. Actually, I met someone through someone else, and they're in a completely different field, but they recommended me. And so I think just like Jimena says, it helps expand your network. So it's really important. Okay, so we have another question coming in anonymously, unless anybody else wants to answer this one. No? Okay. The next question is, how early should you be thinking about networking? Well, we're just talking about that. And how do you actually start doing that when you're still in college? Good question. Go ahead, Josh.
Anybody and everybody is networking. I think, any conversation you have, whether somebody knows somebody or somebody knows something about a different industry, I think just about any conversation you have with anybody, there's always a takeaway. Very rarely do I have a conversation where, obviously within reason, but, rarely do I have a conversation where, I can't, I can say that, it wasn't at all worth my time. Particularly when I was looking, and to answer the first part of your question, it's never too early, quite frankly. And, I think there's always a takeaway no matter who you're speaking with. I remember when, when I was looking for my most recent job, anybody I reached out to, whether it was an alumni of Michigan or family friend or whoever, some people are more helpful than others, but I think sometimes, you would just be surprised that, whatever you may learn from somebody or who they may connect you with or what they might tell you. So it's, any conversation you can have is a positive in my mind.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, I agree. All of that. Katie, sorry.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Josh said. It's never too early to start networking. And this was brought up earlier. I just wanted to reinforce it. Your professors in college are going to be invaluable resources for you. That is a really, really easy way to start networking without having to really put yourself out there, because I know it can be intimidating. It can be awkward. You can feel like you're being onerous or a burden. It's, show up at your professor's office hours. If they have an interesting lecture, go up to them after class and say, I thought that was really interesting. Like, when are your office hours? I'll show up. Just letting your professor know that you're interested, letting them know that they, you value what they're telling you and that you find what they literally do for a living interesting. They're automatically going to react positively. I promise you. They've chosen to make a career out of this. So that would be, in my opinion, a really great place to start. And then you never know what kind of doors that might open. Worst case scenario, you develop a really great mentor who will be able to guide you through the career process later in college. But, best case scenario, maybe they are like, have a bunch of connections that they can set you up with later in life. But either way, that to me was a really valuable way to sort of dip my toe in the water of learning how to network without feeling like I was just diving in headfirst and firing off LinkedIn messages or whatever.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, as kind of like a supportive, I guess an example of how that works is like your professors are your allies. And so if you go into class knowing that they're your allies and that if you put your best foot forward, that is a networking opportunity. Great example is my professor got me my first paid gig out of film school, and recommended me to his wife, who happened to be a filmmaker who got funded. And he was like, you should work with Nicole. And I was like, oh my God, I got paid like 2 months after graduation for a film gig. And in the film industry, that's not heard of. Like it takes a while to start getting paid in the film industry. Different from a lot of other industries, but that was a really good example. He just emailed me a month after graduation, like, hey, I have an opportunity for you, and I didn't expect it to come from him, but I did network with him. I did make sure to have personable and professional conversations with him about my goals, my careers, and what I was looking to do. So that just kind of backs up what Katie just said about, including that. So we're going to go on. Anybody else have anything to say about this topic? Okay, we're going to go into the next question. Any tips about what to wear to an interview? Also, is it important to follow up after an interview with a thank you email, or is it better to send a handwritten note? Who wants to take this one? Well, looking at Jimena because she's a recruiter. But go ahead, Caitlin.
Well, I think it's interesting to think about like what you're wearing now, especially with like, the digital interview process that I'm sure is here to stay for a lot of industries, especially if you're interviewing for a role that's across the country, or a remote position or whatever it might be. I think that, we see a lot of funny content about this, but you should always have on the right pants as well, in case you have to stand up. You don't want to be, in yoga pants. This has happened to me before, not on an interview, but on a video call where I had to like go answer a door and I forgot to do the like bottom half. So I think that that's important in today's day and age to keep in mind. And I think also like the whole like wearing a full suit, these other like people at banks probably, have a different experience. But for me in marketing, like if I showed up to meet with clients or an interview, like in a suit, which is like what I got in college. I remember like I asked for that from my parents, like as a graduation present, and then it was never used again because it was so formal and so over the top that it was like uncomfortable for me to show up in something like that. So I think every industry is different, but like what's most important is that you're like you're looking yourself like you're the best version of yourself. And as long as you feel confident and that's shining through, I think you can't go wrong, whether that's digitally or in person. And then the other question, what was the second part of the question?
Second part of the question is after, should I follow
Oh,
up?
the thank you note.
Yeah, should I follow up after the interview with an email or should I send a handwritten note?
So when I was first interviewing, like right out of college, I always sent a handwritten note. And I thought it was really funny though. My very first job, I was in the office and it came through. Like the mailman brought it in because it was like 3 weeks later. So I would just never rely on that. I mean, I think it's a nice gesture if you have someone's personal address or business address and you can send that. But I think, again, especially with this whole remote life and that being here to stay for a lot of people's positions, you're not going to have people's like home addresses. So the best solution to that is to immediately send an email right afterwards. Yeah, Jimena can probably like relate to this on the other side, but I think whether you're a recruiter or not, like once you get to a certain level in your career, you're constantly interviewing people. And I know for me that every time I interview someone and someone sends me an email afterwards and like, shows that they actually care, they add me on LinkedIn afterwards and like bring back up like what was valuable in our conversation. And it's just an easy way to like distinguish yourself from someone else. And no one's ever going to say like, oh, wow, that person sent me a thank you. Like, oh, that's terrible. That's so late. Like, no one's ever going to think that. It's like only a win-win for you to take that. It's super simple step. So I always do that.
Thank you so much for that. So I'll just briefly say something before I call on the next panelist is that I've always send thank you emails. And then after I intern somewhere, I always send a handwritten note after interning there, because it just adds that like, okay, you've worked with me for a couple of months. Now I'm going to mail your card to the office because I know you're going to get it. And it's going to be normally a surprise because nobody sends handwritten notes. And I feel like it's extra special when you do it after you've had the opportunity. And then I do a follow-up handwritten note like 6 months later, so then they remember me, or hopefully they do. But so that's something that I've done in the past. But we're gonna go ahead and have who raised their hand? I think it was Stefan. Stefan? Yes.
Yep, that's me. Yeah. So yeah, my piece of advice for that. When I was recruiting, I personally sent thank you notes to the recruiters I kind of had a connection with, or the interviewers. But I think regardless, especially, Caitlin brought a good point with the remote working environment. I think it's probably your best bet to send an email. And with that, you can probably, if you do get an internship, use the advice of sending a note after like your internship's done, just to kind of show you appreciate the experience and you're looking forward to connect even after the internship as well. So I would say in your case, yeah, definitely stick with an email. I mean, the note's a nice touch, but with delivery times and you're likely not going to get their address probably nowadays, like not at this day and age. Your email's the best bet. So.
And then was that calling everybody? Was there someone else who had something?
I'll just quickly reiterate Caitlin's point to make sure that you include something thoughtful about your conversation with the persons that you speak with. Like I always try to take notes on and like call out like really important things that they tell me. And I think that really will set apart your thank you note. The one time I would tell you to send a written thank you note is if you're really trying to set yourself apart for maybe like a sales job, because those are things that you're going to have to do in that kind of role. But for most roles, I would say an email is perfectly fine, but you absolutely need to send a thank you note. No ifs, ands, or buts. Send a thank you note because they will never say managers are petty and they'll be like, oh, they didn't send me a thank you note. Like, that will like not set you apart from the rest of the field. And so just iterate that point.
Thank you so much, Jimena. Okay, so we're going to take another question. If I'm still in high school, oh no, I am still in high school. What if I don't have any work experience yet? How do I sell myself to get my first part-time job? It's a good question. Mena, how would she sell herself to you?
You're going to want to talk about your personality and your work ethic and the things that you've learned in school. So, project management. So if you've worked on a group project, we all dread them, but you're learning some sort of relatable skills in your coursework and what you're doing. And just talk about like the work ethic and make sure that you know exactly what the company's doing, why you're interested in the role, and what you'd be doing in the role, I think are all important. They're not going to expect, if they're interviewing you for a job, then they're not going to expect you to have all of these things prepared. Like they've seen your resume, they're aware that you don't have any experience. So make sure that your personality and your work ethic just comes through in what you're saying about yourself and why you're interested in the position.
Perfect. Thank you. And Caitlin?
Oh, I don't have anything else to add on top of that. I think my hand was accidentally still raised, but I think she definitely summed it up nicely.
Oh, nice. And Katie?
Yeah. So I just think, everyone's going to get their first job at some point. So I think, it's totally fair for you to be in high school and not have any work experience. I think one of the things to do is that'll set you apart is to identify things in your personal life that are applicable for the job in which you're applying. So, maybe you help with certain chores around the house. Maybe you help your brothers and sisters do things at home. Maybe you volunteer for a club in school. Identify things that you already do in your day-to-day life that are applicable for the role that you're applying to. Just because it's not actually paid work experience doesn't mean you necessarily don't have any experience. So I would, try to think through when you're applying for this job, sort of what questions might they ask me and what have I done thus far in my life that I can apply to this experience and tell them why I'm qualified for that role. And I think just by giving it that sort of thought, you should automatically differentiate yourself. And it shows them that you've thought about it and you've come prepared and you didn't just like lob this application in the hopes of getting a job.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And then Josh.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I agree with everything that's been said. And this is not to diminish how capable I'm sure each of you are, regardless of your age. But if you're in high school and you're applying for a job, no one is expecting you to know all the answers. And no one is expecting you to know exactly how to do the job. To be perfectly honest, like I've worked with interns in college in each of my jobs, and I don't even really expect them to know much either. I mean, they're there to learn, you're there to learn. I think the most important thing is that you show you're there to learn, you show that you're there to work and you have a good work ethic and you have a good attitude. And I think especially as somebody who's young, I think people really appreciate that. And you're not just like a lazy teenager who wants to like sit around and play video games and do nothing. I think it's about personality, it's about work ethic, it's about showing hustle. They're not expecting you to solve the world's problems as a 16, 17-year-old kid. So
Exactly. That's everyone gave, all the panelists, thank you so much. Each one of you gave invaluable advice. And so I do want to tell the attendees, whoever's watching this, if you have questions for any of the panelists after this webinar, we can definitely still put them in touch with you. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in, we have one more question. From Arias Rivers.
I can answer it quickly.
Sure. Do you see it?
Yeah, it's about how is applying for a job in post-COVID-19 world's going to look like. Going to work. I think it's going to work pretty similarly where you're going to be applying online. You're going to be talking to people over the phone, virtually, via Zoom. I think the one thing that is going to change, you most likely will not be going in person for interviews in probably the next year to 2 years. I think that that is definitely a thing of the past, just because Zoom allows some flexibility and ability for people to really just schedule you really quickly and get you in, and allows the process to move a lot faster. So I think that that's really going to be the only difference that we're going to see. So I think one difference probably that you'll have is you're going to want to ask more about the office environment and the culture that is around there, because you do want to get a feel for that. If you're going to be accepting a full-time job there, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. So don't be hesitant to ask your recruiters or the people that you're interviewing with, like, what's your hybrid work culture like? How is the office? What is the environment? Is it noisy? Is it not noisy? Is it open? Feel free to ask those questions. People want to know where they're working, and nobody's going to be surprised if you're asking those questions. It's just going to all be virtual now.
Wonderful. Great. Yeah, it was a great answer. So we have to wrap up now. But thank you again for your last question, Arias Rivers. I'm not sure how to pronounce your first name. My apologies. But yeah, so thank you again to all the panelists. We are going to, if you have a question for them, you're going to go ahead and reach out to me. So if, let's say Caitlin works at a company that you're interested in, or Jimena works at a company you're interested in, you can go ahead and send me an email and say, I'd really like to get in touch with Josh or Katie and ask them this question or whatnot, and then we can do that. So my email's in the chat. It's nserrato@scholarshipfund.org. If you forget to write that down, it's always on the website. Next, we have our next event in 2 weeks, which is going to be talking about careers. So after college, after the internships have happened, what about jumping into your first career right after college? And so that's going to be our last webinar in this series. So make sure that you attend that. It's going to be July 13th, and the invite is going to be going out next week. So we're going to take a quick screenshot before we go. Also, if you didn't see the social media handles in the chat earlier, they're right here. Clear as day for you to write down, or just like pop in your phone real quick and like or follow us. So if my panelists can give me their lovely smiles on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. I waited for your hand to move, Jimena. She put her hand up at 3, but totally fine. I was like, I saw it out of my peripheral of my eye. I'm like, Jimena's hand is up. But no, this has been absolutely lovely. I think all of you gave some great sound advice, and we had some really great questions from the attendees. So we'll see you again soon. And YLs and President Council, thank you for joining us. Alumni, thank you for joining us. And everybody have a lovely night.